Why couldn't Darth Vader heal his injuries? After Vader was burnt on Mustafar, he suffered through many injuries that caused him a lifelong amount of damage to multiple areas of his body. Not only were his limbs completely cut off, but he also suffered damage across his eyes, his ears, and his lungs. These injuries restricted him in many ways, leading him to living a miserable life. So it really makes you wonder, why throughout his time of over 20 years of suffering did he never heal himself completely? I mean, surely he would have done anything possible to rebuild his strength, right? Well, this answer is a little bit more complicated than we think, but thankfully, there's two main ways to answer this question. So let's get right into it. We all know that Vader was burnt and he had injuries throughout his entire body, but these weren't just an average injury like a cut or a small bruise. These were third-degree burns throughout every single part of him, and it created his life to become a living nightmare. Because of these burns, the medical droids actually removed his original flesh and replaced it with a brand new synthetic flesh during his surgery. This would basically be like new skin for him, and it would cause him to barely have any of his original tissue anymore. It was kind of a huge reason he was in so much pain while wearing his suit. It would itch him constantly being under there, and sometimes medical droids would have to come and just scratch him down in order to help him with the itching. So that leads us to our first reason, the bacta tank. If Vader really wanted to heal his injuries, couldn't he just enter his bacta tank? Well, actually no. Unlike the other times that we've seen bacta being used, Vader's situation was way different. The purpose of a bacta tank wasn't to magically heal the wounds that somebody dealt with. That really wasn't the focus of it. What it actually did instead was to speed up the healing process of an injury. It would basically do the same thing that a normal healing process would do, just faster. But you see, Vader on the other hand, didn't have injuries that would heal naturally. For him, this wasn't a cut on his face like Luke. Instead, these were lost limbs and third-degree burns. Luke's injuries would have recovered eventually anyways, but Vader's wouldn't have. So going back, the bacta tank really didn't heal him much, but he would use it for different purposes instead. For example, it really became a place for him to meditate. At times he really enjoyed it because it would just allow his body to be free from his suit for a little while. But in reality, sometimes meditating was really dangerous for him. The reason for this is because he'd usually be so consumed by his thoughts while in the tank. Majority of the time, he would just think about Padme and all the horrible things that he did that led to her death, and these thoughts would just really eat him up alive. Now, because the bacta tank really didn't heal his injuries as much as he would like them to, Vader began to resort to other things and actually try to find new ways to heal himself instead. One of the ways he did this was by using the Force. We've seen other Jedi in the past use Force abilities to heal wounds and injuries, so surely Vader could do the same, right? Well, not exactly. Force healing was primarily a light side ability. It was something that a user with a strong connection to the light side could learn, but on the other hand, a dark side user really couldn't. That is, unless they were so consumed by it. Crazy enough, Vader did actually try this multiple times, and this is explained in the Legends novel, Shadows of the Empire. He tested himself by concentrating so deep within the dark side, focusing on his hatred for Kenobi, and guess what? Well, it worked. It actually worked. He started to briefly repair a small amount of his tissues. Vader looked down and saw himself healing, and the thought of that brought him joy. But there was a catch. Because he gained that happiness from healing, it easily distracted himself from his focus, and the healing process would just be interrupted. It drove the dark side away from him, and then he'd have to start from scratch over and over again. Remember how I mentioned earlier that if he did want to perform this healing technique, he would have to be fully devoted to the dark side? Well, although it seemed like he was, in reality, he actually wasn't, and this is why the healing wouldn't work for him. His identity as Anakin Skywalker was his main weakness. It was his constant battle that he dealt with every single day. All he wanted to do was to remove that small amount of light in him. He hated every part of it, and he hated that Anakin was a part of his former self. So that was really how he tried to heal his injuries, but with both the bacta tank and the Force healing always failing, it really became an endless cycle for him. It kind of makes you think, if he was successful, would he still have that same connection to the dark side? I mean, you have to understand, Sidious created it so that his suit would bring him so much pain and suffering. So if his wounds were healed, it really makes you think if he'd still be himself or not. But I want to know from you, what do you think? If Vader was able to fully heal his injuries, do you think he still would have had that same connection to the dark side? Or do you think that would have been totally diminished if so? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to learn more about every function of Vader's suit and what they did, I did attach a few videos on the screen right here. I hope you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you, always.